world. And to me, these moments are actually a celebration of what we have in common. And what is common is the beautiful soccer game, but it brings all these people together, and it brings the reality that we do have a lot in common. We've got a lot to work on. There's no doubt about it. The politically charged world out there. But today, to me, it's about celebrating the unified of what we are. And to me, again, I want us, the United States, to be unified against Iran and hopefully get a result. But ultimately, to me, that's what the World Cup's all about, is reminding the world that there's a humanity there, and this is a celebration of the great global game.
Taking a closer look at Iran, it was 0-0 up until extra time in the second half against Wales in their previous match. They get 2 quick goals to win the game 2-0. What makes them dangerous, in your opinion?
Well, I think a couple things they did. They adjusted tactically this tournament great. Actually, my former coach, Carlos Queiroz, is the head coach of the Iranian national team right now, and they started on a 4-5-1 against England. They wanted to sit deep. That was disaster. 6 goals against them.
Yeah.
They adjusted to a 4-3-3. I thought they defended much better. They were much more organized, and they really frustrated Wales. And I felt like you just saw the goals coming. I felt like you just could see that Wales was getting more and more stretched, and eventually they just opened up. Obviously, they got up in extra man, too. That really helped. But ultimately, to me, it shows that they're not the England team. They're really an organized, defensive, disciplined team that likes to counter. And so, again, today is a huge day for us to both find a goal, but also be great and resolute defensively.
We're going to talk about this game just a little bit more here, but first we want to show you what's happening over outside of the Brew Hall here at Allianz Field as the fans start to pile in for this match. Everybody, rightfully so at this point, I would say, still inside. We got the heat set up outside, the TVs are set up outside, everybody getting ready to go. And if you made it all the way out here, good for you for braving the traffic and braving the snow. We are certainly doing the same here out at Allianz Field. But as you can see, guys, I got to tell you, as somebody from California, this is such a foreign concept to me. We are talking soccer, we are talking World Cup, and there's snow on the ground. I've never seen this before in my entire life. Help me through this, please. How do we do this?
Well, none of us have seen snow on the ground for a World Cup.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that is something that is new, whether you're from Minnesota or you're from California, because it's never played in November and December.
That's right.
But yes, I think this is just another way that we represent Minnesota. We all were here for the February 2nd game with the U.S. men's national team against Honduras.
We were.
Much colder than this is right now. Yes, we have snow on the ground, but that was a fantastic day where everyone just layers up, you bundle up, throw the hand warmers in your mittens, you grab a spot outside, there's plenty of heat. I mean, this is going to be a great day, and I don't doubt that Brew Hall is going to be packed. Maybe not as packed as it was for England, because it was like 55 degrees that day. The day after Thanksgiving, everyone was off of work, but it's going to be a fantastic crowd.
And the crowd, we have to give full credit to the crowd that was here at the match against England. We were at full capacity here inside of the Brew Hall. People had to be turned away at some point against in the match against England. That just shows you how passionate this fan base is and how ready they are for this World Cup match, not only against England, but today against Iran as well. You mentioned the match against Honduras. It just brought me back. Manny and I were talking about this. We were both here. Listen, I have to admit, I dipped inside, I think, 3 times. At one point, I think I made it 35 minutes into the first time. I said, you know what? I can't do it. Did you stay outside the whole time?
I was outside the whole time. Yeah. I was in Minnesota. No, I'm from here. You dress well. You layer well. I had my teenage son. But I love the fact that you brought up that game. I love that Kendra brought it up. Again, today, there was a moment where we were a little bit nervous about our qualifying. It wasn't easy going. It was chunky. Yep. And this game today kind of solidified the reality that we are going to qualify for the World Cup after not qualifying in 2018 for 8 years. So to me, it's very appropriate that there's snow on Allianz Field, and we're celebrating soccer not only for the country, which is awesome. The people that came out and watched the England game is amazing, but we know the country we're watching today. We know there's a ton of Minnesota soccer fans out there who are Minnesota United fans and are U.S. national team fans, and I love that today is going to be unifying the two to hopefully get a result.
And there's no doubt Kinder was tougher than me in that game. There's no doubt about that as well. I want to point out, and when you look back at that match against Honduras here, the elements, rising to the occasion. I felt that they rose to the occasion, even though it was a 0-0 draw against England. I felt like this team, although young, found a way to rise to the occasion. And today is perhaps another opportunity for them to do the same, I would think.
Yeah, and I'm kind of torn about the whole concept of not qualifying in 2018, and only one player being a part of that group, Pulisic, and only one player having World Cup experience in DeAndre Yedlin. But I also think that at the same time, could that be a good thing, right? Because you don't have that memory. You have everyone having talked about what that felt like not to qualify.
Yeah, sure.
And we've talked about that with Minnesota United before. You can talk about different stages in a club's history, but if those players weren't there and part of that, this is a new history that they're trying to write. So maybe the men's national team is doing much the same now that they've gone back in 2022. They're there, they're trying to get the job done. young players that have a different sort of maybe swagger, a different sort of style. Not that the other teams didn't have swagger and style, but they're doing it kind of their own way. And I think that they showed up against England. They showed up in the first half, at least against Wales.
Sure.
We'll see what they do today against Iran.
I don't want to call it an elephant in the room. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Everybody can see, only one goal in 2 games for the United States. That is a little bit of a problem. If you can be inside Greg Berhalter's head right now, what is he going to do or try to do to generate more scoring opportunities and find a way to get at least, perhaps, I would say 2 goals in this game would get the job done. How do we get to 2 at this stage of the game?
Well, again, I think it's a combination of Greg getting the guys excited about being a little more brave going forward, a little hungry to find chances, whether it's through the run of play or through set pieces. Again, I think we've got to be careful about getting too exposed early because we can't go down. But ultimately, I think he's going to go with a very similar lineup, kind of talk about the midfield 3. I think all 3 of those guys, particularly Yunus Musa and Wesley McKennie, can arrive late in the box to create chances. I think Sargent's going to be playing up top, and I think he's got goals in him, but he's got great work rate to allow maybe Timothy Weah and Pulisic to create chances. So ultimately, to me, it's a team mentality today to create the goals, and I like that. I rather prefer when you have a team saying, hey, we've got to do this together, and to say if that guy scores, we win. Because to me, the guys step on the field, they're going to fight, battle defensively, battle offensively, and that to me is a little bit what Kendra alluded to. Like, that's where I think we're at our best in the men's national team.
Sure.
When we know that we have to be a unit, we have to work hard together, we have to find the goals together, we have to defend together. And I think those are the elements of the past national team things that I want these young guys to grab. And then I want to take their quality, which I think is better than the past because they're getting better in the future, and use that to really kind of combine that to be a great opponent today.
And shame on me for taking this long to point out the fact that the United States, oh, by the way, can still win this group if things break their way. If Wales defeats England today and the United States wins. Yes, it's very possible that the United States could emerge as the Group B winner, and wouldn't that be something considering the way the tournament started for the United States?
It would, but at the same time, there was a little bit of an unexpected for me going into this tournament. I think we saw the group when they came out when the draw happened. We knew, and we thought, or at least I did, that England would probably be on the top, rising to the occasion in that scenario, but also knowing that there is no easy game. This is the World Cup. We can look at every single one of these groups and talk about who we thought was going to be there. How has Spain performed? How has Germany performed?
Right.
Even when they're sitting in the positions they are at the end of the day. Costa Rica getting smoked in their first game and then coming back, if it was Japan that they beat in this next game. Japan beating Germany. It's nuts, but that's why you play the game. That is why you have these kind of tournaments and these kind of moments for countries to step up, to show themselves. They're all playing for pride. They're all putting their own version of their crest on. And it's a different animal when you get to the World Cup, and that's what's so fun to see. That's why everyone gets behind it. That's why there's 600-plus people in the Brew Hall.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're expecting even more in the Brew Hall as things go on. And as you can see right now, look at that soccer. So I can't even see the ball at this point. It's a white ball and white snow.
Absolutely, I guarantee, Manny, have you played in a game where the soccer ball rolls in the snow and it kind of looks like Saturn because it sticks to it? I mean,
and it's orange. It's usually orange as well.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't think they're expecting any snow in Qatar at this stage of the season, but it is snowy in Minnesota in late November, as we typically see. Guys, let's widen the lens a little bit here on the World Cup and take a look around. A few teams have already punched their ticket through. Brazil is through. Portugal is through. I got to tell you, the one team that has stood out to me really, and I don't know if I should be surprised, but I'm only surprised in the sense of the guys that they are missing. The French have looked spectacular so far. No Karim Benzema, no Paul Pogba, and they look like a well-oiled machine. Should they be considered the favorite moving forward now?
Well, I certainly think Brazil and France are.
Yeah.
I think both those countries have shown elements that none of the other countries I think in the World Cup have. Now, again, they've got to do that each week in and week out to try to really build to being a World Cup champion. But ultimately, I think France is unique story because you just never quite knew. Sometimes on paper they should be what they are so far, but they sometimes implode. They sometimes don't get the unity of what you want. And then I think the Benzema injury, for me, probably elevated them a little bit from the style they've had in the last couple World Cups where they've won, in terms of they have Iliou Giroud at the top guy, and then that really brings out Griezmann, it brings out Mbappe and the other players that are dangerous. So to me, as great as Benzema is, maybe one of the best forwards in the world right now, ironically, that injury might have given them a little bit better identity to start the World Cup.
Interesting perspective. Kendra picked Argentina to win the whole thing. They gave a bounce-back win against Mexico, however, a beauty of a strike from Lionel Messi. What do we think of Argentina now at this point?
I think they're on the upward momentum now, which is what they needed. That first game was a struggle for them. You could see clearly the emotion and the disappointment, and I didn't know how they would react as a group. You know, you'd like to think that they have the quality, and they do, but mentally, emotionally, no one, and I for sure can't understand some of the pressure that these players are under representing their countries, especially like a Messi.
Yes.
The pressure that he's feeling, but I think after their last game, when he scored that goal, you could see what it meant. That was more emotion than I've ever seen on his face before. Just going straight over to the fans, you know, facing them, pointing at the crest, just everything he was doing that you could just see. I feel like they're on the upward swing right now for momentum and skill and feeling confident. So that first game was a disappointment, and now I think they're on the right track.
Staying on the topic of Lionel Messi, there were reports swirling around that he could possibly sign, you know, with Inter Miami, and that has not been confirmed, and that's still speculation at this point. But what would it mean to Major League Soccer to bring in a guy like Lionel Messi? I don't care what stage he is in his career, he is still a world-renowned player. What would that mean for the league to have him, even if it's only for a season or two?
I think it would be massive. By the way, he's only 34.
Yeah.
So this isn't like CR7, who's 37.
Right. Good point.
Very ancient compared to Messi.
He's currently competing in Champions League for PSG, so I think he's still in the prime. I think there's some real validity to it. I think the reality is that you know, Miami and Mr. Beckham are really invested in the growth of that team.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it would mean a lot. I mean, I think the MLS and Major League Soccer is about the growth of the game at all levels. We're getting great young superstars in. I think we get the right superstars that are older. I think it just elevates the league in general. I mean, those superstars can bring around the young guys. The young kids can push the superstars to make sure the quality and the energy and the effort of our league. And to me, it's an example of what MLS is becoming, which is one of the top leagues in the world.
I can promise you, if Lionel Messi signs with an MLS club, and let's say it's Inter Miami just for the sake of argument, when Inter Miami comes here to Minnesota, I can guarantee you I'm buying a ticket. I think a lot of people are thinking, I'm getting me a ticket so I can see one of the best players in the world.
Well, that's what, honestly, it's like that when Javier Hernandez, Chicharito comes here. I think they're the only team that the buses park down in the tunnel by the loading dock, because the fan base, if you parked out here where the team arrivals and where they normally get off the bus, it would be absolutely crazy. So there are superstars that are already in this league that had that kind of a following that can create sort of that cultish feel in a positive light. Messi would be one of those guys, and I think that, yes, anytime you get a quality player into this league, it benefits everybody. Everybody that wants to love the league, everybody that already does, people that play in it, players that play against them. It elevates the entire league, and I think when you have superstars like that, and to Manny's point, the youngsters too, if anybody saw the Brendan Aronson piece that Tom Rinaldi did with him, you know, just 3.5 years ago, surpassing a scholarship to go to IU, playing with Philadelphia Union, going overseas now, and what he's done. So there's a youth movement within the league and the academies, which Minnesota United, much the same with, I think we had a combine coming up here in January and everything else. So you want to see the combination of both, the superstars, but also the young players continue to come through.
Forgive me for being Mr. Glass is half empty at this point, but we do have to talk about this. Should the United States lose or draw today, what does that do in terms of, listen, I hear the same conversation every 4 years. Okay, this game is growing, it's growing, it's growing. Wait, we don't make it to the knockout stage, or we don't make it deep. Oh, well, nobody has interest anymore. I think that's a little bit overblown in both areas. But if they don't make it into the knockout stage, what are the changes that the United States would have to make or consider making moving forward?
Well, I'd be gutted as a fan, first and foremost,
No
just
doubt.
because we want to get through. But ultimately, I think, obviously, knowing that we're going to host in 4 years, knowing that we have time to build the group, I'd be more encouraged no matter what from the England game. Because
So you wouldn't consider this a failure if they didn't get out of their group?
I think in the perspective of getting ready for 2026, no. As a fan and not getting out of the group today, I will leave as a failure, and I'll say we failed in this World Cup. But no, I think for 2026, I won't think it's a failure. I think we've already proven that we're building something to go, and this group is primed to be more in their prime in 2026. So for me, this game today means everything as a fan. I think we walk a field, we'll have a lot of players who've learned a lot no matter what. If they make a deeper run than that, or if they win it all, yes.
Yeah.
But to me, in terms of 2026, I think the England was the big moment for me, because it let me know that this young group is going to grow up, that we're going to find even more players in the next 3 or 4 years. Whether it's this staff or new staff, I think there'll be a lot to work with, and we should be excited in 4 years.
And Kendra, to your question, and I want to talk to you about this, because I mean, to answer your question, when you asked Manny, in my head I would say, I would certainly be disappointed, but I don't know if I would necessarily feel surprised that they didn't make it out of the stage. Would that be fair to say? I mean, considering the youth, but in fairness, when you look at the group, when the group first came out and you say, this is a group that the United States, I think, very well could and should probably make it out of, but I don't know if I would necessarily feel surprised if they didn't make it out of.
I would be surprised because of the quality of the group that this is and the places that some of these players play. I understand that a World Cup is different and playing on the world stage and representing your country is a little bit different in the World Cup, not just friendlies, not just qualifications like they've done to get to this point. But I would be surprised knowing the level of the leagues that these players, a good majority of them are playing in now, whether it's overseas or even the elevation of MLS. So to me, I think it would be disappointing. I think I would consider it more of a failure than not. And I know that we're talking about 2026 and getting this group and this young group to the next level and knowing how old they're going to be when they get 4 years from now in 2026 and we host. But I do think at the end of the day, with the quality of the players that these guys have, that this roster has, the amount of time that they've had to sort of prep and game plan, and Berhalter being in control since basically since they didn't qualify in 2018. When did he take over? 2020, 20,
Yep.
Yeah. So like when the qualification for this one kind of started. So I think to me I would consider it a failure, and I think it's good to have pressure. I think that they should thrive under pressure, and that's part of when you raise your game, and the guys that step up under pressure are going to be the ones that are going to be here in 2026.
For a long time, the game has just grown and grown in this country, and of course it takes time to, nurture talent and see how the results play out. But where do you see the state of talent in this country at the youth level moving into 2026 and even into 2030?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more enthusiastic, positive, excited. Again, I think Kendra's right again that I said it a different way. As a fan, I'd be a failure. But the reality is, no matter what, we can't be complacent after this World Cup, because it's a call of arms to continue to push the development, continue to push this momentum that we have of just this explosion of trying to think about ways to develop, trying to think about ways of producing some of the best soccer players in the world. Every MLS team is doing it. Every academy is doing it. The league is trying to think about different ways to bring along young kids. So to me, no matter what happens this World Cup, the next 4 to 8 years is massive for the identity of our country, and to see if we want to become one of the better developing countries of soccer players, and then also want to be one of the better countries that every World Cup is consistently competing.
Back in 2002, the U.S. had a good push. In 2014, I thought they had a pretty good push as well. It feels like we take a step forward and then maybe a step back. What do we need to do to prevent from taking a step back?
Well, I think there are some cycles, some ebbs and flows in the players that are coming through, and a lot of it I do believe in momentum. I'm a big believer in Uncle Mo. I do think how you go into a World Cup, how you get there, even how a draw feels. A draw versus Wales felt like a loss, but a draw versus England. So, and I think the mentality of the group going in as well. So, I mean, 2002, and we didn't talk about it much going into the Wales game, but that was Tony Sana. Yeah. That was his year, and you talk about starting off with the win against Portugal. That's momentum to me for that U.S. team, and the expectations were maybe a little bit lower in 2002, and they exceeded those. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot about mentality. I mean, you hear Carly Lloyd talk about it all the time with the women's national team, that, people thought they lost to the United States before they stepped on the field against the women's team back when she played in some of those earlier years. You got to get to that level of swagger, I think, from the men, that you have this mentality going in that every game is there to be won. And I don't think that it's necessarily the group of players in those years that you brought up. It's more just sort of the ebbs and the flows and the cycles of how these actual cycles go.
I would say, though, things have changed. I mean, the difference is we have a young kid now that comes and watches a game here and dreams at 8 or 9 or 10 years old. In the past, the figuring out how to become relevant and become a good soccer player was really hard. You had to dream, and he had to go kind of find himself. I think now there's a pathway. Obviously we have the academy. Obviously we have a huge, I think, great youth soccer community that is committed to pushing and developing and working to get better. And we've already done a great job, but even better, to take that kid, to take that love and hunger and passion and guide him. And again, when you do that for not just hundreds, but thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands all over the country, I think now you're looking at a different perspective of what the U.S. is going to be in the global game, not only from how we compete in World Cups, but again, how many players we're producing that are at a high level for the world.
And for those of you watching, don't forget, in 2026, not only does the United States host the World Cup, but also Canada and Mexico also as host sites for the World Cup. And in 2026, the field is going to expand. 48 teams, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yep. 48 teams going to be competing in the World Cup as opposed to 32. That's going to be something new. 48 teams. I don't know. Listen,
at least it's all in our time zones. I mean, I'm already getting up at 4:30 to watch these games right now. So.
And I have to point out, when Alexi Lawless was here back in the match against Honduras, I bickered with him a little bit, and he called me an old man, and he's right. I'm an old man. I like the way things. I like the way things are. To expand to 48 teams, though, what is that going to look like in 2026?
I mean, I just love it. You know, I'm sorry. I thought this World Cup, you already have these upsets.
Still old and grumpy over here.
Older and grumpy over there. We have a ton of upsets already. This World Cup seems like it's been more even than any World Cup I've ever seen. So to me, more countries involved, more countries, you know, fighting and seeing where they are compared to a Germany or Spain, or hopefully a U.S.
Maybe Italy can get in there.
Maybe they can get in too. Ouch.
Out to you, Italy.
Ouch. Yeah.
They know, but the tweets go that way.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, but I actually think it's going to just grow the game, grow the excitement, grow this is a great celebration.
In all seriousness, no, when I was growing up, did you ever think you would see Italy not only just miss one World Cup, but back-to-back World Cups? It just doesn't. Something is. I cannot believe what I'm seeing with the Italian program.
My son and I said, if you win the Euros, you should qualify for the World Cup.
Fair. I think that's fair.
I can't believe they won the Euros and weren't allowed to be qualified.
Unbelievable.
So,
yeah, but you know, when the pressure's on, you got to rise to that occasion. Apparently, they weren't able to do it for the World Cup, for the qualifiers.
Ooh, Italy. Maybe we'll be talking about them in 4 years and their resurgence at some point. But guys, as we wind things down, let's look at this match. It is a pressure situation. We talked about it earlier in the show. How do you see things playing out here by the end of 90 minutes?
I don't know. He pointed at you first.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I got us winning 2-0. I got us finding ways to solve problems. I got us just, you know, really coming off of the momentum that Kendra said against England, but now maybe being a little bit more on the front foot, a little bit more savvy. And again, I think I hope we learned a little bit from Canada this weekend about we can't be naive. This is not going to be an easy game.
That's a fair point.
It's not going to be a wide open game that we think there's going to be a ton of chances. We're going to have to be patient, and we're going to have to make the most of our chances.
Kendra?
Well, as long as Berhalter didn't throw any F-bombs out there as bulletin board material, too, for the opposition, like Herdman did, I think that might have helped Belgium a little bit. But I do, or not Belgium, excuse me, but I do think that the United States, Croatia, who's not short on talent either,
that's right.
I think that the United States wins 2-1. I do think that they come up with a win, but I'm still a little nervous about the back line at times. Matt Turner, I think, has been excellent for the most part. He's done what he's needed to do. I think that the midfield three are going to be the key point for this group, defensively and offensively. Transition moments forward and backwards, and them navigating that. And if it's Tyler Adams in there again as well, I think he's going to be key. But capitalizing on your offensive opportunities, maybe getting that first goal, I think is going to be huge. And then on the defensive side of things, just locking it down.
I think it's going to be 1-1 at the half. And I think somehow, some way, in the 78th minute,
I love it.
Whoa!
This is
78th.
In the 78th minute, the United States breaks through with a game-winning goal to win it 2-1 and advance to the knockout stage.
Who scores it? I mean, if you're going to go that detailed, you might as well tell us.
Reyna comes in.
Oh, okay.
And makes a name for himself, as we all have been waiting to see as Gio Reyna comes in. And if all of that happens, I will be on a plane to Las Vegas tomorrow and be hitting the table because I'll just want to keep that hot streak going.